Hi, good morning. Last month, California voters fell victim to a game of bait and switch. A narrow majority voted for Proposition 14 because they thought it would increase their choices in our state and federal elections. Instead, what they got was the opposite. Because what they didn't know is that Prop 14 came as a package deal. There were some definite strings involved and they were not pretty. By voting for Prop 14, the voters in fact okayed another law that literally had never seen the light of day. It was passed by the legislature last year as part of a budget deal. And here's what it did. In the general election, when someone votes for a write-in candidate, their vote's not going to count. That's one thing. Another thing it does is it effectively censors candidates from telling voters who they are. For example, if you're from a smaller party, like, say, the Reform Party, you won't be able to tell voters that that's your party of choice on the ballot if this law is allowed to kick in. We are profoundly troubled by this. My name is Gautam Dutta. I'm an attorney leading a coalition of plaintiffs who are both voters and prospective candidates who are very worried and concerned about this new law called SB 6, which is designed to put Prop 14 into operation. And what brings us here today is because we have filed legal papers in San Francisco Superior Court to block this legislation, to block SB 6, so that it is not allowed to take effect, and that in effect will put Prop 14 on hold until the legislature passes a better law. I'd like to now introduce you to our plaintiffs, and then we'll be plenty of time to take questions. So first, I'll turn to my right to Richard Winger, who is a national authority on ballot access law. That is, to make sure that every candidate and has a fair shake when they run for office. And he's also publisher and editor-in-chief of Ballot Access News, and we're really happy to have him here today. And one other thing I should do before is I wanted to especially thank the Santa Clara Labor Council for hosting us here, as well as their chair, Steve Preminger. So without further ado, let me hand you over to...
Some people may think write-ins are not a big deal. You don't realize how frequently write-in candidates actually win. In 1982, the voters of northern San Diego County elected a write-in candidate to Congress at the general election, Ron Packard. And in 2002, the voters of Long Beach elected a write-in candidate mayor. In 2004, the voters of San Diego City elected a write-in candidate mayor, Donna Fry. The only reason she didn't take office, after they counted all her votes, they came up with a ruling that about 10% of her votes couldn't be counted because the voter did not know, after spelling her name on the ballot, which obviously indicates the person wants to vote for her, the voter didn't know he or she was supposed to make an X next to the name they'd just written in. But if it weren't for that, she would have been elected write-in. And we've had 9 state legislators across the country elected by write-ins in the last 20 years. People do know how to cast a write-in vote. The reason the sponsors of Prop 14 banned write-ins in the general election, they told me, they said it would cause mischief. We're expecting a fair number of U.S. House races and legislative races to end up with two candidates from the same major party on the ballot in November. But take a district that's predominantly Democratic, and it does end up with 2 Democrats in the ballot in November, but it's not overwhelmingly Democratic. If write-ins were counted, this would enable the Republicans to launch a strong write-in campaign, and if the 2 Democrats are evenly matched, the write-in might win with just a little over a third of the vote. So they don't want that, so that's why they stopped it. So if you're thinking that write-ins are not a big deal, it is a big deal. You want to introduce the next one?
Yes, and now I'd like to introduce you to Steve Chesson, who is a longtime leader and activist for electoral reform, and in his free time he's also president of Californians for Electoral Reform.
Thank you very much, Gautam. I'd like to begin with a quote from H.L. Mencken, who said that for every complex problem, there's a solution that is simple, neat, and wrong. And Proposition 14 and SB 6 are clear examples of such simplistic so-called solutions to what could be, what is a complex problem. The supporters of Prop 14 said in their ballot argument, they said the economy is in crisis, and I think we can agree with that. They point at the high unemployment rate in California, over 12%. They point out that the legislature repeatedly fails to pass a budget on time, and that's very true. They sum it all up by saying that the government is broken. And whether you believe it or not, changing the primary system is not how we fix state government. We need to look at real solutions, which are going to be a little bit more complex than the simplistic ones that the proponents of Prop 14 have offered. But one solution to ending, to getting, one of the things they claim that they want to do is they want to get more moderates elected to the state legislature. Well, as we've seen in the states of Washington and Louisiana that use a system, the same system that the proponents put into Prop 14 and SB 6, that system does not elect more moderates. The Washington state has, I believe, the second most polarized legislature in the country, where California being the first. To get more moderates elected, you really need to look at how we elect the legislature as a whole. We need to look at solutions such as proportional representation, system that almost every single country in Europe uses to elect their legislatures. And with that, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, I'll make one final comment about why it's important for candidates from smaller parties to be able to say who they are. Because some people might say, well, they're from small parties, why should I care? Well, consider this. With these new rules, you can say you're from a party, let's say it's a Democratic Party, but not be a Democrat. For all we know, that person could be a Republican, a Green, or anything else. And what this does is opens up the possibility of stealth candidates, and so that there's more mischief that's wrought during an election. Also, it might even force candidates from smaller parties, to say they're from a bigger party just so that they have a platform. That is just fundamentally un-American and wrong. So that's why the stakes are really high for this case, and why it's really important for people to come together, and we really salute the leadership of the plaintiffs who got involved here. So with that, we'll be happy to take questions.